Everyone, welcome to this video. In this video we will try to understand the flexible flow. So before we begin with, we need to understand the difference between the flexible flow and the UA flow. So far whatever the flow that we have created, it's all a UA flow. So basically we will be using the visual editor to build our flow. On the other hand, flexible flow, it's more of a code first implementation. So you write a code and run the flow. Again, the UA flow, it uses the visual designing, wherein the flexible flow uses the code here. Complexity, this is great when you have a simple to medium complex implementation. This is great when you have a complex implementation. So onboarding, it's pretty easier. Basically, you will be using the visual design to design your flow. Here, you need to know the Python and rest of the tools that you wanted to use, everything through the code. So the way we define, it's like a flexib flow.dag.yaml, here flex.yaml. It doesn't have to be this way. This is the convention it's followed. Primary use case, again, when you have a medium to complexity, then you can use it. This is when you have a complex implementation with reusability in your mind, then you will be using the flexible flow. Right, again, it just reiterates that DAG flow prioritize the visual clarity. This one prioritize the development experience. Now we will go to the Visual Studio and build our flex flow. Go ahead and create the flow here. We are using the same command. However, if you see here, the type is a standard. There is no type called flexible. In one of my previous video, I told you that the types of standard, evaluation and chat. So for the flexible flow, we will be using the standard type. So let me go ahead and create the flow here. Now the flow got created. This is a pretty standard flow. Now what we want to do is that we want to update the YAML file here. So remember, I told you that the flow, it's going to be flow.flex.yaml file. It doesn't have to be, it's just a name. But maybe let me rename this one to, instead of DAG, let me call it as a flex. Go ahead and update the code here. So if you see here, we are not using the visual editor here, right? So if you see here, there is no way we can edit this using a visual editor. So now what it says is that there is going to be a file called program.py in which there is going to be a function. So now let me go ahead and create the program.py file here. Go ahead and create the file here. Call it as a programmer.py. And we will have this code here. So again, if I go to the definition here, so name of the file, it's programmer.py. So that is what we have. And the entry point, it's a write program. If I just come over here, this is that write program. If you see here, it takes the input text. So if I just come over here, that is what we are having here, inputs text. So that is going to be the input. Name of the deployment, it's optional. It has a optional value here. And what it does is that it is calling the load prompt. So if we just come over here, this particular function just uses the Ninja template. So if you see here, we are passing the name of the template, it's called hello.ninja2. So if we just come over here, this is where we define the prompt template, and it passes the input here. Then the prompt will get generated, that will be stored in the prompt variable. Then we are making a call to myLLM tool by passing the prompt name, deployment name, or whatever the configuration that we wanted to have it. Now if we just go to the my prompter tool, it is again a custom definition. So it takes all this input, so the prompt, deployment name, temperature, top and maximum token, all of those. So if you see here, it is getting a client, right? And it is passing all these parameters here. So if you just come here, there is another function definition called get client. So basically a LLM client we need to create, right? So if you just see here, what we are saying is that we are creating a Azure OpenAI client here by passing all this information, right? So it will make use of the env file. If you just see here, os.environment get whatever the key is that, right? We are getting all these keys. So if I, which means that we need to have a env file. So I have created a env file here. It has all these values here. Remember, like exactly this is what we had in our previous demo. Same thing, except that I just updated the corresponding key here. So now this client, what it will do is that it will create a Azure Open API client using all these variables here, right? And like that will be available here, and using which we are sending the prompt to the LLM, and then we will have a response back from the LLM that we will print it here. So we can check this programmer.py file directly, because like we have a main definition here. So if we have a main, so this is what we defined, right? So if this particular file is executed as a main file, then it will start the trees and it will call this function and it will print the result. So now let me go and run this. So let me go to the folder here, file, clear the terminal. Now let's go and execute the programmer file. So to do that, we have to say like Python programmer, and like I just run it. So if you see here, like it is making a call, and then it is giving us some response from the LLM. So basically like it's a standard Python program, but like that will be used in the flow here. Now if we just go back here, this is the flow that we are talking about, right? So now I can run this flow. So to do that, what we have to do, we just need to use the test command. So remember, like in our previous video we discussed about this. So now let me go to the previous folder here. Now let me do this flow test, name of the flow, input, we can say whatever the input is that, then run it. Right now again it is going to, if you see here, like there is a Python program that we have here. So when you run the flow, what it does is that basically it is just running the programmer.py file and it is calling this particular method. So now we can also do this. Instead of Python, we can just say give me a Java program, right? Give me a Java program. Now it is going to give us the Java program, corresponding Java program, right? So this is the flexible flow. So basically like a flexible flow, it's meant for the developers who wanted to, like let's say like you already have some implementation, and on top of that implementation you wanted to use the LLM, then you can use the flex flow. For this video, thank you for watching.